luxury timepieces. Today, we're going to be talking about watches, horology, or right now what people are calling collectible investments. We have Mr. Jonathan Quek, and then we have Dato Michael T from Watch Talk
Hello.
today sharing about watches, one of my favorite hobby actually. So before we get started, John, I want to just quickly ask you how much do you know about watches, or have you done any research?
I watch. Before I watched was Fitbit. Yeah, but in my 20s, I did learn a lot about watches from Mike. Uh, yeah, so he has been trying to get me into this watch game in my 20s. But then I did a very silly mistake. The first watch I got was a Panerai, and he told me that is a cheap watch.
Yeah.
That is a
Yeah,
It's
what?
like a good
That is a
watch,
what
a good
watch?
watch.
he told me that's a shit watch. Why do you even go and buy a Panerai? I said, but everyone is using Rolex and up APs. No, why should I buy something that is similar to everyone? And yeah, he then educated me. Yeah, I repented, but I've not really gone to yet. But I think before we start, let me take some time to just share with the audiences who Dato Michael T is first, so that you guys know where he's coming from, right? So let me just share a bit background of how I got to know Dato Michael T. So when I first came back to Malaysia around 11 years ago, I was basically cold calling and sending proposals to banks and financial institutions. So I met him at the point of time. He was working in a data analyst company, right? And he was a director there. He was the youngest director among all these directors in financial institutions that I've met. And he was the only guy who actually gave me a chance to present fully to him. He had his comments, okay, but he didn't comment much. He gave me a lot of encouragement. So in a way, right, my birth in the financial industry, in financial education in Malaysia, was kick-started after the meeting I had with Dato Michael T. So after that, I knew after we became friends, he then worked with CMB Bank, and he became the director of retail equities in CMB Investment Bank. And since then, he has went ahead with deals in corporate advisory, doing IPOs, private placements, corporate restructuring, M&As for PLCs and MNCs. And right now, he's also advisors to many public listed companies such as Equities Tracker, MCOM, One Tech, Managed Pay, and he's working on a few IPO deals as well. I knew him as a watch guy. That was his hobby. And around a year plus ago, we met up for drinks again. And he told me about his idea of creating a watch investment club. And I said, are you sure or not? Do people invest in watch? And then he showed me a bunch of slides. And we were doing it over wine at a bar in the bun. And then he showed me this Facebook group that he created called Watch Investment. If you guys do not know about this group, go and check it out, Watch Investment. And he actually got the newspapers like The Age where they interview him about watches. Yeah. So very interesting guy. Been such a pleasure to learn from him. And today I'm very happy to have him. Thank you so much, Mike, for coming on
Thanks.
this Facebook Live with Entrepreneurs Experiment.
Okay, thank you very much, John. I think John, we are like 15 years of friends since that time I know you. I mean that when I get to know that time you are the youngest entrepreneur somewhere in Asia, something like that, if I'm not mistaken, John. If
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, yeah, that time. And I find that you're very energetic, you're always full of ideas. And I think the time when we met up once, I think the second time we already like click and we can just step off ideas. But again, don't get me wrong. Panerai is still a very good brand. I don't want to hurt some brands outside who maybe some of their marketing directors or brand director is in this talk. Panerai is still a good brand at the point of time. But again, if you're talking about watch investments, I think that there's something that we need people to understand a bit more on the watch brands which are available in the market. So I mean that again. Thank you very much for John and again this
Investment.
okay, for inviting me over here. I'm here today to share with you my experience of 12 years of collecting and trading watches. we really have this investment club idea started actually from Singapore, John. Actually, it's from our good friend, Derek Tan, Timing and you. He's the one that actually encouraged and says that, look, Mike, I mean that I've been looking at you wearing different type of watches when we travel together, and you keep on telling me about can make money from watches, can make money from watches. Then why not you just educate the public and tell them that, look, watches can really be an asset. It is no more like a hobby. It is no more like a decoration. I mean, I know that Desmond owns APs, and then Desmond owns Rolexes, and I mean that watches is the only one so-called luxury product that guys can wear. We don't wear jewelries, we don't wear rings, we don't wear bangles like yeah. So I think watches is something where a gentleman needs it for different occasion, and if you can make money out of the accessories that you actually can make yourself looks better, okay, why not? To me is why not look at some assets that you can wear, okay, that can represent you and at the same time make some money. So that's how actually we started this watch investment club from Singapore, and then now it is in Malaysia, it is in Indonesia, and also now it's also in Brunei.
So what does this club do? Is it like an organization where people come? Is it like a social club? Is it like just a bunch of people, like collectors club, where they come here and then they show their watches? What does it do?
Okay, I think like what Jonathan Craig says, when I first started, it's just only a Facebook page, Desmond. So that is a page where actually, if you go through some of my watch investment Facebook, I write a lot of reviews about watches, but not only Swiss watches, but also Japanese watches like Seiko's, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean that because I have friends from both sides, those that only believe in Swiss watches, and those hardcore Japanese watch collectors like Grand Seiko's and all those new Seiko's. But usually these two groups, it's very hard that they can talk, Jonathan. So it's like when you drive a European car, we look at the Japanese car, JDM car drivers, and the JDM car driver look at the European car drivers. It's very hard to get to the top. But if you ask me as a watch collector, if I like watches, and if both the Japanese watch and Swiss watch give the same quality, and also at the end of the day, if you choose the right model, both Japanese watch and Swiss watch can be an investment asset, my answer is why not? So that particular platform itself is actually sharing a bit more on knowledge and education. We are not like some typical watch club where people get around and then you only can get in when you have very nice piece of watches or expensive watches, and places that they get around, it has to be very atas places. Ours is not. Ours is more on like to get people who really like watches, and we share about what are the latest development in the watch industries, and also regardless of you're wearing a Swiss watch or a Japanese watch, you can actually join us and we will just share things about watches. So it is a lifestyle education platform, but it's not so-called a high-end atas style platform. So I mean, Desmond and Jonathan, you can always drop by our gatherings anytime.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
So in terms of let's just get things started. You have a presentation. Do you want to start out with the presentation, or do you want to leave that until the later?
Yeah, I think we can start when you have. I have some data to show. Where you come across some data.
Okay.
Maybe I can start with one page, so at least it's for the benefit of everybody, which is in this particular talk right now, which is the myth of all the watch brands. Because I think that we have heard of so many watch brands in the market, like John loved Panerai at that time. I think a lot of Hong Kong actors that time are wearing Panerais. And then Rolex is the name that actually passed on from our grandfather to our father, now passed on to us. We heard about Patek Philippe watches where you never actually own a Patek Philippe. You're actually merely looking after it for the next generation.
They say the same thing about the waiting list too.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So if you ask me that there are so many brands in the market, but there are a lot of myths in the market where people always think that the more expensive the watch brand that you go, the better the return of an investment. But that is actually not the case. So maybe for the benefit of the audience today, let me share my slides. Can you guys see this?
Yeah, we can see the hierarchy of watch brands.
Yes, hierarchy of watch brands. So we look at the hierarchy of watch brands, right? You look at, basically, we will actually segregate the watch brands into 4 different hierarchies, from the basic luxury to luxury watch to high-end luxury watch to ultra luxury watch. I think we are more familiar with the brands under the high-end luxury watch, and basic. I think for the ultra luxury watches, maybe Richard Mille will sound a bit more familiar to people. And then maybe that's why I think that you stay in States for quite some time. I think you're quite familiar with names like Jacob & Co. This is a very famous upcoming brand. The rest like MBMF and Urwick, it actually looks like a Iron Man watch rather than a classic watch itself.
Tony Stark was wearing an Urwick in one of his movies, wasn't it? Like Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, he is. But Robert Downey Jr.'s his favorite watch is still a Patek Philippe.
Oh, which one is it? Which Patek?
The Nautilus. But the one with complications. Yeah. All right. So you see, you look at this watch hierarchy itself. When we have a first glance, John and Desmond, you might think that if today I want to get the best ROI, I should actually buy those brands under the ultra luxury watch. But that is actually not the case. The best return on investment with our data for the past 12 years, or actually, you do not need to know data also. I mean, that when you ask your friends, I think that the first brand that will tell you is actually Rolex. It's because actually, basically, in any of the Rolex boutiques in the whole world, when you walk in, there's no way of you seeing any stainless steel sports model available for you to purchase. Right? Your waiting list.
Any men's model above 36 is completely rare now, except the two-tone Datejust.
Yeah, and the Datejust that is available, maybe you're looking at like mother of pearl with half gold, rose golds, and diamonds. Even the most basic stainless steel Datejust, you can't get it right now in any of the boutiques where you walk in, right? So you look at these four hierarchies itself. The so-called investment grade watches, for us, I cannot speak on behalf of others, is actually Rolex, which is under the luxury watch. Okay, the Patek Philippe under the high-end luxury watch. Okay, the Audemars Piguet under the high-end luxury watch, and also the Richard Mille under the ultra luxury watch. But this doesn't mean that, like, for example, JLC is not a good watch. It doesn't mean that Omega is not a good watch. But the return of the watch, if you are comparing to the four brands that I've just mentioned just now, the return itself just can't compete with that four brands. So if you ask me whether the myth is like the more expensive you buy, so-called the returns of it will be better, my answer is no. And I think that's when, if you're into watches, you know that people are talking about the Trinity brands, right?
The Holy Trinity. Vacheron is one of the ones that are not doing well compared to the other.
Yeah, Vacheron is the only one that is not doing well. And you'll be surprised, actually, the watch designer Gerard Genda, which is behind Overseas, which is behind Nautilus, and also which is behind this Royal Oak. Actually, Royal Oak and Nautilus really went very well, but Overseas somehow is the one that is in the Trinity but didn't really take off.
But they're doing better nowadays, isn't it? Because people don't
yes, because of to be honest, because there's a lot of watch collectors, when they can't get hold of a 5711, which the waiting list, as you mentioned, is like you never actually get a 5711. Right. You have to wait until the next generation. So they don't mind now to go into Overseas, because the premium you pay for Overseas itself is not as crazy as Nautilus. As like what you meant, everybody knows that Nautilus now is a brand new Nautilus is going for about Ringgit Malaysia 600,000. Is absolutely crazy. And today we have just received a single seal Patek Philippe brand new Nautilus. So it's actually very rare, because it's a single seal, which means that the whole seal itself is actually coming out from Patek Philippe factory, and the sales advisor actually didn't cut the seal. So that piece itself will easily go above 600, close to 700.
Right.
Yeah.
People are using it as a store of value now, because I don't think people are going to open the seal and wear the watch. They're just going to put it in the safe as like gold and silver, because John himself is a gold and silver commodity guy. So this is very similar to what we're doing. But referring to the brands, I just want to point the fact that not just the value of a watch or the ROI of a watch does not depend on a brand, because Rolex female models don't tend to do as well, right?
Correct.
But certain Omega models, like for example, the ones with Snoopy faces, are the ones that will do better. So in short, like, really need a lot of understanding of the market prior to actually investing, right?
Correct. And it doesn't guarantee that every single stainless steel sports watch, giant sports watch, will make you money. Like for example, if you're talking about stainless steel Yachtmaster, you're talking about stainless steel Deep Sea, if you're talking about stainless steel yacht, even Explorer 1, Explorer 2, or even the Air King, the chances of or the movement of the price itself is actually very limited. So again, what Desmond, what you say is correct. We really have to study the demand and supply from the market, and usually those data that we got are actually from the data in Europe. So the data from Europe combined with the data that we've gotten from Hong Kong itself, because Hong Kong is the largest consumer in this part of the world. They are number one consumer in the whole world. They used to be number one. Now China is actually number one. China now is actually number one. So when we get all this data, then we will know what are the models that we are going to get in, and then we will price the model according to the needs and demand of the market.
Okay.
So
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So I'm curious, why is it that the female Rolex watches are not doing as well as the male ones?
Okay. To be honest, nowadays, I think that you know that female watches size is slightly smaller. You're looking at the old days, the females like to wear 26 mm, and then last year, Rolex actually relaunched a 28 mm for ladies. But when time goes by, you can look at like a lot of celebrities. They do not wear small watches anymore. They like to wear big watches, so-called bigger size. So slowly, to them, a dress watch size, it will be good at 31 mm. But if they want to have a more sporty look, a daily watch itself, even my wife, she will actually prefer at least a 36 to 40 mm. So when it hits into a 40 mm stainless steel sports watch, you will find that, which means that a Submariner 40 mm stainless steel sports watch, it will actually attract both female and male buyers. So when the demand actually comes from both female and male buyers, definitely the demand is higher than the normal ladies watch itself. So that's actually drive the price and demand for stainless steel sports watch and bigger size sports watch. So which means that the smaller size watches today, my answer is really the demand has dropped. And in today's, starting from last year onwards, I think that if Desmond, you know that those days people are chasing after the Royal Offshore because it's like 44 mm, the Panerai is 44 mm. But now it actually goes back to a 40 mm. It's a 40 to 41 mm, 39 to 41 mm era right now where people are chasing for those size. So that also explains why the female size watches are not so popular or not so in demand compared to those gents watches.
Yeah, I think another thing that just want to point out for the people listening is that when we are referring to the MMs, this is in reference to the diameter of the not the diameter, I guess the measure, depending on how they measure it, because different companies measure it a bit differently, but just the size of the watch. Like in general, like if you heard of Rolex Submariner, that's about 40 mm, right? If I'm not wrong.
Last year they relaunched a 41.
41, yeah, they upgraded it to 41. So it's most men watches are around that size. We're not talking about those Frank Mueller, not talking about those Richard Mille. Those are different sizes.
Correct.
And the typical Royal Audemars Piguet is going to be about 41, 42, around that sizing. So just to give you guys a measurement, the typical ladies watch like the Cartier and then the Rolex women's size is going to be around 26, 28 to 31. So that's just to give you guys a bit of reference so that y'all know. Y'all can go to rolex.com, look at the sizing and look at the so you get an example of idea about what it looks like.
Okay. So I have another question because I think I'm the rookie here. Yeah. So because just now you were talking about demand, right? You're talking about demand of watches, which actually causes the price of watches to increase. So if I can share this article actually shows that, can you guys see the article?
Yep.
Yeah. So this article actually shows that Apple Watch outsold the entire Swiss watch industry in 2019. And if you look at this article, I think this is one of it. This is another article on Forbes. That was CNBC, and this is Forbes. It's saying that Apple is killing the Swiss watch industry. And one of the things I observed is, and you can see in this article, you can see the commentators, people like from LVMH and all. Okay. So my question is, we are also starting to see the guys who can afford it are moving to iWatch. Okay. Why do you think the price of luxury watch is still increasing?
Okay, this is a very interesting question. Let me pull out a data. Let me pull a slide. Let me see whether this. Okay, nice.
Yeah. So for all of you guys watching this, right, I just want to let you know, Dr. Mike has not been given any questions, right? So this is something to pull out. Yeah. So if you guys are right now, yeah, go and share it, add, message someone your comment, right? Text your friends, because this is something that I hope you guys are learning something here. Yeah.
Right. Okay, can you guys see these slides?
Yep.
Okay, let's come back to this. Okay, the watch industry has been around for more than 100 years. Trust me. I mean, those brands that survives until today, they're 100 years, they're 150 years, they're 130 years. So the first crisis where actually this is the question that a lot of my members ask us and says, hey, Mike, if today I buy a 170,000 Rolex Daytona, will this watch still be relevant 10 years down the road? Because 170,000 is not a small amount of money. Back in those days, John and Tesla 170, you can buy a studio, but now you can just get a Daytona, right? So I just hope a lot of my members look. The watch industry has gone through a lot of revolutions, right? Do you still remember we so-called the quartz crisis during the Seiko's days, so-called the battery watches crisis? So the watch itself has actually survived through the biggest crisis, which is the battery watch, which is quartz crisis during those days. So those days, there are also news from Japan telling that the quartz is going to replace mechanical watches because the maintenance is easier. The most important thing is the time itself is much more accurate. But look at it today, where are the quartz watches and where are the mechanical watches? I can tell you that eventually these two watches will stay on together. So it's like, for example, today, when people ask me about, are you worried about the iPhone or the smartwatch will overtake or will take over the whole suites of the mechanical watches or the quartz watch industry? My answer is no. It will still coexist together. So in future, I will have friends at this point of time. Actually, he wore two watches. So we'll have one smartwatch on his right hand, and he actually wears a mechanical watches on his left hand. So this is something that it would definitely coexist both watches. And you look at the data that I will show over here. So you can look at there is a drop of this Swiss watch demand in 2016, because that is the time when Apple actually launched the first iWatch itself. Yes, my answer is yes, that year itself, actually it was a very bad year for the whole mechanical Swiss market. Actually, the whole sales itself dropped. But you look at from 2007 onwards, right? You look at the orange color watch itself, it is growing and it's still growing until now, but the blue color watches itself actually is dropping. Why? Because if you want to classify a watch as a basic luxury watch itself, the price has to be above 3,000 Swiss francs. So meaning after 2016, the more expensive watches actually is performing better compared to those Swiss watches which are relatively cheaper. So you can see that nowadays, during our parents' era, Desmond and this John, you might heard about the brands like called Rado. Rado is a Swiss watch. But actually, when it hits our era right now, how many of us still will use a Rado watch? Don't get me wrong, it's a good watch. But again, whether are they relatively, are they competitive enough to compare with the rest of the brands itself? My answer is, you get my answer. You will know the answer. How many of your friends surrounding you actually wore a Rado watch, mechanical watch, right? But for those brands like Rolex, like for those brands like AP, for those good brands for continuously growing one, when the price itself is, they price it correctly as a luxury watch, it is very different because the demand for a luxury watch will be always there, and a smart watch, the functionality and the design will always be very different compared to the luxury watch. Yeah, so to me, I'm not too worried. I think that eventually these two things will still coexist together for very, very long.
Yeah, well,
So
my thought to this is that in terms of Apple watches, right, I think they are fantastic. I think, Swiss watch can never beat Apple watch in terms of utility and functionality.
Correct.
But I think the difference is that they play very different roles. I think when a lot of people think Swiss watches is tell time. I'm wearing a watch right now, but my time is 5 o'clock, and it's definitely not 5 o'clock right now. So my point is that Swiss watches are being kept as a store of value, number one, and also it's like a car. Like in a previous episode of our podcast, we talked about John buying a 2-door car, right? It was a very interesting story in order to impress people. And I think watches do the same thing as well. If you look at the watches that hold value or tend to do very well in terms of ROI, they tend, from far, you tend to know what that watch is. If you notice, like from Royal Oak, for example, from far, you can see the band, you can see the bracelet, you know exactly what that is. You see a Nautilus from like 20 meters away, you know exactly what that is, right? Submariner 20 meters away, you know exactly what that is, right? So I think that's the big difference there. It's a symbol of, like, I feel like, status, and also it's a store of value as well. And the fact that, earlier you mentioned that men only have a watch as the main jewelry. So most men will spend most of their hard-earned savings and money to buy a jewelry that they can actually wear, which is a Swiss watch. And the thing is, the fact that with Apple watches, well, the difference is right now I'm seeing something really interesting. Though people are putting the NFTs that they're buying. I'm not sure, Dr. Michael, you know about NFTs.
Yeah,
they are buying NFTs, and then they're putting the NFT image on the wallpaper of their Apple Watch, and then they are like showing off to people. Look at this! I paid 20 grand for these NFTs on their watch. I thought it was interesting. That might be the new flex in the future. I don't know, right? But yeah, John, you had a question. I sorry to cut you off earlier.
Yeah. So you're saying, just one thing to clarify, right? So what you're saying is the higher end watches, they still do well, right? So the mid range, right? The mid range, the lower range, they are affected by iWatch. But you also showed in your graph that there are only that few brands that kind of do well as an investment watch, investment grade watch, right? Right. So I would love to know, like, why is it that in the high end market, or even in the ultra high-end market, why is it that only that few brands do better as an investment grade watch?
Okay, let's look at, let's don't go back to the slides, let's just have a chat, right? So I think what Desmond brought up a very good point just now is actually about recognition. So which means that if you are wearing a Royal Oak, you are wearing a Nautilus, seriously, or now you're wearing a Richard Mille, you can see what watch that person is actually wearing from very, very far away. And actually, you will also get to understand a bit more about that person's character through the watch that he wears. Like, for example, from our experience, we roughly know that what type of buyers will actually buy a Richard Mille. We roughly know what type of buyers will actually go for a Royal Oak, or going for a Rolex, or going for a Patek Philippe, right? So it's recognition itself. And second thing, I'm sad to say that, or I can say that proud to say that, those four brands that we mentioned, you look at Richard Mille itself, they actually control very much of their production. So you can see that almost every single piece of Richard Mille is actually a limited edition. So it runs on very, very limited productions. And look at Rolex. Rolex knows that everybody is going after their hot models like the Daytonas, the Pepsi, the Batman, the Batgirls. Why they are not producing so-called more of these models to meet the market demand, and why there are still a shortage of these watches in the market? It's because they control the quality itself, and also they control the volume itself that is going into the market. So there are other brands which I do not want to name them. Is when you wanted to buy that brand itself, you can anytime walk into any of their boutiques, you will see stocks available. You can even get a good discount, right? So that doesn't give you that good feeling of wow, I can get something that anybody else can't get. And also at the same point of time, you will not get that type of recognition when you wear the watch. And those are the things that actually drives the market, the demand, and people are willing to pay, is because of they feel that I can get something that others don't, and that also actually guarantees the basic so-called value of the watch itself. So if you ask me whether other brands, if they want to follow Rolex to do this, will their sales itself go up? My answer to you is not, because in the watch industry, in the watch game itself, I tell you, branding is more than 100%, John. Branding is so important in watch industry. The heritage behind the brand, how they associate the brand with the ambassadors, and then where do they advertise the brand itself. They really, really put in a lot of effort, not only money, to make sure that the brand attract the right buyers. And when the brand itself carries a lot more value than the actual watch itself, this is where actually the price will go crazy.
Yeah.
Because
So
Rolex themselves make over close to 1,000,000 units a year,
Correct.
right? So supply wise, there are a plenty in the market, but they are still able to create what Daytona. What is 2 times, 3 times the retail price now? Which is
Daytona now is 3 times. It's 3 times.
yeah, it's insane. Like you can walk in and you buy it for what 50K, right? A Daytona at
Yeah,
retail.
you can still get it about 48, 49, but if in the gray market, you're paying about 170 for a Panda.
That's the white color dial.
The color one, yeah.
Yeah, so which is absolutely insane if you think about it. And Rolex makes like close to 1,000,000 units a year, and it shows how important the brand is. I just want to ask you about this, your thoughts about this brand here, because we're talking about ultra high-end luxury watches. You know, one of the ultra high-end luxury watches that I like, but never had the chance to buy, is this brand called H. Moser, right? And it's an up-and-coming brand. Some people consider them to be independent. Some people consider them not. So we're not going to look into that. But one of the things is that if you look at their gray market price, they don't really move up that much. Okay, why is that? And they make really, really amazing work too, and their watches are beautiful as well.
Yeah, okay. You see that when you talk about the H. Moser just now, right? I think that in this part of the world, people who are collectors, then they know what brand you are actually talking about it. But when you talk about Richard Mille, even to people who are not a collector, they will roughly know how expensive is the watch. So the Richard Mille itself, in terms of when they're in ultra luxury, they did a good job in actually positioning it, the branding and the value to the market. And look at the ambassador actually that Richard Mille is associating their brands to, like Dato Michelle, and also there are so many other so-called sportsmen, the tennis players. Those are very, very good ambassadors. I think three of us here, you will definitely remember those days when Tag Heuer uses Tiger Woods as their ambassador and uses Brad Pitt as their ambassadors. Those ambassadors will keep under our mind until today, right? So Frank Muller and they are actually doing on that part, but at a higher level. So the brand itself has actually, I think, I talked to my dad about Richard Mille. Then my dad will tell me the answer is that, oh, that politician have a lot of Richard Mille, right? So in his mind, it's like, yeah, that is a watch that only politicians that has a lot of money, don't know where the money comes from, can only afford. So even he will know about that. But if I talk to my dad about the brands that just how you mentioned, or even Erwick, or even Jacob and Co, my dad might thought that is it a biscuit brand, Jacob, something like that. So the branding itself is very important, and I know that John is an expert in brand. So John, maybe you want to share with us some of your ideas about this.
So I, rather than sharing my ideas, I'm actually very curious because I still remember that time when I bought the Panerai.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I bought the Panerai was because if you watch the movie Expendable, the movie where there's all these superstars, most of them were wearing Panerai. So I thought that Panerai was cool. And at the point of time, if you go to all these watch boutiques, you will see Panerai as one of the top selection as well. But today, when I go to these watch boutiques, I observe that the brand Panerai is no longer there among the top. Yeah, so I'm actually very curious, why is this happening?
Okay, in terms of just as mentioned about watch, I think the brand itself and the heritage itself, the quality itself is very, very important. Panerai actually has a history with Rolex before. I'm not too sure, Desmond, do you know that actually Panerai has a history with Rolex?
They used to outsource their movement, right?
Yeah, correct. So you can see that actually if you look at the first Rolex watch which actually worn by this swimmer who swim across this ocean, the shape of the first so-called water resist watch, the casing itself actually looks like one of the Panerai series. So and also one of the Panerai watch itself actually uses a Rolex engine. So this is something not to say, this is something not surprise in the watch industry, because you actually see that the first Daytona, Rolex Daytona, is actually using a zenith movement, right? And you know that the earliest so-called Patek Philips, some of them, they are using other people's movement as well. So if you ask me, Panerai, they have a very good story, they have a very good heritage, And yes, that time they have actually chosen so-called this right ambassador, like for example the Expendables in Hong Kong. I think if you watch those Hong Kong drama, those fellas were actually pilots. They like to wear Panerais. I don't know why. Those actors. So until now, actually, John, if you want to sell your Panerai, if you sell it in Hong Kong, you will still get a better value compared to you want to sell it in Malaysia. And one of the also got the biggest reason that I personally find that people nowadays they don't really like Panerai is because of the size. Because Panerai, if you ask me comparatively, the smaller size is actually 44 mm. The big ones they can go above until like 48 mm, right? And as I mentioned just now, the trend has actually gone back to the size from 39 to 41 mm for gentlemen. And then Panerai itself is also very thick because it is very well known for its diving purposes. And nowadays, people don't really like to wear thick watches. So overall, people don't feel that Panerai is a fine watch. It is a very good watch. There are certain brands, but when you put on hand, you don't find the fineness in this watch. But you can find this fine touch in AP. You can find this fine touch in PP. You can find this fine touch in Rolex. So I think that the ambassador, the size itself, and there's one more very crude reality is actually Panerais are the easiest to find in replicas market. So which means that if you put a Panerai original next to a so-called a replica from far, to be honest, I don't think you will see a difference. But for the rest of the brands itself, it's really, really very hard for you to do a replica that looks exactly like the Panerai. So that also draws a lot of people who eventually says that, look, if today I want to buy something, I want to make sure that the authenticity and also it's very hard for those factories in China to replicate. So that is also one of the reasons actually it drives Panerai value and the branding itself across in the market.
But I still remember when I go to Thailand, you go on all these streets, chat to chat and all, there will be people giving you Rolexes that looks exactly like a Rolex. It's just as heavy as a Rolex. So when it comes to replica, I do think that Rolex has more replicas compared to the rest, right?
Okay, you can put any highest grade Rolex replica next to the original one. You ask Desmond. When you hold on hand, you can straight away tell that the colors, the polish, and the fineness itself is very, very different. But you trust me, if you go and get a high grade Panerai and to get a original Panerai you put next to each other, there's not much details in Panerai itself. So if you look at Rolex itself, you have this inner ring engraving, you have this laser engraving, and then you have all these so-called the numbers punch in between the lugs itself, and also you will find that the lume itself is also very different. So I've personally seen Panerai replicas before where the lume itself is the same. The strength of the lume itself is even the strength is even the same. So to me, I find that Rolex, yes, there are a lot of replicas in the market, but it's really hard to make until a one-to-one. But because of Panerai, I think that the details of the watch is not so much. I think to look from far itself, I think that it's very hard to see whether which one is original or not original. Even I sit next to you, next time when I wear a fake Panerai, you might not even see. But for Rolex, I think you will definitely be able to see it. Even you know that Desmond, you're talking about the green Submariner, right? The replicas green Submariner will never ever make the same green color as the original Rolex green Hulk.
The downside, right?
With the dials, the color itself is impossible.
Yeah. So let's get to the point where we talk about investment right now. So let's say right now there's a lot of people. We have a lot of Bitcoin millionaires. We have a lot of NFT millionaires, right? The thing is, they know that they're in an industry where it's very volatile. So many of my friends who are becoming very wealthy because of this new form of technology, new form of money-making opportunities, right? They always ask me, Desmond, what watch to buy. I heard Rolex is a great investment. I went to the boutique. They only got ladies president to sell me. So where do you get all these Submariner? Where do you get all these Daytona, this Pepsi? And then when some people, they hear Pepsi, they think about what do you mean go to Rolex to get a Pepsi? You talk about the
Pepsi.
kind of drink, right? So there's a lot of terms in our industry as well. Like we have things like Smurf, Hawk, right?
Batman.
Yeah, and we got vampire. I'm buying a
Yeah.
vampire. So, but okay. So let's say people are looking for a watch to invest in below. Do you want to use US dollars or do you prefer to use ringgit Malaysia?
Maybe use ringgit because now is correct.
Okay, let's
Malaysia, yeah.
do 30,000 and below. That's the
Uh,
hardest one I would say.
I don't think there's any Rolexes below 30,000, but Rolex that has a brand itself which actually cater to the 30,000 and below, which is Tudor. I think that everyone else knows that Tudor is actually so-called the little brother of Rolex. They have recently done quite a lot of their pieces correctly. Like for example, the Black Bay 58, for example, the Panda itself. And they have actually gotten the right ambassador, I have to say. And those ambassadors are targeting those buyers who are at the age that they can afford to buy a watch from 10 to 30,000.
Yeah.
So the ambassador is like who? David Beckham. Guys,
Jay Chou.
just admit it. Yeah, Jay Chou. Those are the idols during our era. I mean, when you look at the way they wear the watch, to be honest, you will find that Panda itself is superb looking on David Beckham's hand. To be honest, today you put even another brand on David Beckham's hand, the watch itself will look good as well, right? So they have actually selected the right ambassador, and the pricing range that they have set for Tudor is correct. So I've actually told a lot of young executives who says that they wanted to get a good watch. I will tell them that if you want to have a nice, very, very nice sports model watch, don't look at any other brands, go straight to Tudor, wear it for 30, 40 years, you will come and thank me. For sure. You will come and thank me for
I
sure.
just bought a Black Bay 58 just
Okay.
because it's just so affordable, like 14K for automatic movement
Exactly.
watch from a big brand with
Exactly.
a warranty. And I look at the dial. Initially, I bought it just because I just buy it and just keep it, just chuck it, maybe wear it sometimes, right? But I look
Yeah.
at the dial, it was just so mesmerizing because they're using pink gold for their hour marker, not hour marker, sorry, the hands, which is so underrated for 14K. And I learned that one of my friends who bought the watch 2 years ago, and the price has only increased a few hundred ringgit. I think
Correct.
what Tudor is doing is that they're suppressing the price so that they can get more people into the brand as well, which I think is
Correct.
interesting. Like, what's your thought around that price range for Omega? Because Omega Speedmaster falls around that price range too.
Okay, if you ask me that Omega, among all the Swiss watch, usually people will say that Omega is the poor man's Rolex. Yes, you are right. People always compare Speedmaster with Daytona. People will always compare the Seamaster with Submariner, right? But recently, we really find out that if you go to Omega boutiques, chances of you getting the 20-25% discount is no more than the discounts that is given by the Omega boutique shops, boutiques nowadays are getting lesser. And personally, if you ask me, if you can get a Seamaster, which you can still get it now below 20,000, is a steal. But again, you are comparing a 10 plus thousand of maybe about 18,000 plus of Seamaster with a 14,000 Black Bay.
Right.
So again, it's a tough question whether you like a Black Bay, which has the Rolex DNA, or you want to get an 18,000 Seamaster, which has the James Bond DNA. So if you ask me, both are good watches. But in terms of, I mean, if I have to really choose one, I think everybody knows that I'm a big fan of James Bond. So most likely I will go with Omega. Yeah. But for Tudor, I've gotten I've both the Panda and the reverse Panda. A chronograph Tudor priced at slightly below 21,000. That is a steal, Desmond. That is John. I mean,
Swiss
if you
brand.
can get it, just go and just get it. Yeah. Even the GMT, the Pepsi in Tudor, is about 14 plus 15,000. There's no any other brand that can come close to them. Yeah, there's none. There's nothing. There's none.
They're gonna conquer that particular category. But
Correct.
let's move
Correct.
on above 30K. Let's go to the range of below 100,000, right? Between
yeah.
30K to 100,000.
Wow.
Say
Okay.
again?
I will just seriously, if you ask me, I will straight away go to Rolex, or if you like brand new, you can go for Rolex. But if you can accept a pre-owned watch, you can also actually look at the AP Royal Offshore. So some of the AP Royal Offshore, if you ask me personally now, is really way undervalued. I mean, you can remember those days, Desmond, it was selling like about, the brand new is selling about 75, now it's about 100 plus. For those who bought those days and you wanted to sell now, the price is still below 100, the older ROOs, the Vampires, the Volcanoes, the Bumblebee, you can still get it below 100. I think that is a great steal. But if you can only accept brand new watches, you still have to go back to Rolex. I mean, there's no other better choice. You still have to go back to Rolex. Yeah.
Right. So I didn't know that offshores are still below 100K because offshores, AP are raising their price 2-3 times a year. So the gray market is following too, which is insane. Like
Correct.
I remember I bought an AP Royal Oak chronograph, 86,000. Right now it's close to 200K in value, which is insane. Like it's outperforming my real estate portfolio percentage-wise, which is insane.
Correct. So, I think you are referring to the Royal Oak Offshore where you can have the see-through of the engines. I'm referring to the old Royal Oak Offshore that without the see-through casing. So that one you can still get below 100.
That's the 10 years ago offshore, right?
Yeah. Like the Volcanoes, you can still get Volcanoes below 100. You can still get Bumblebee below 100s. You can still get the old Panda below 100, the Navies below 100. Safari is even cheaper. You can get it maybe about 70 plus. Yeah, those are, if you ask me, I think that for the quality, for the brand itself, that piece of timepiece itself is really worthwhile. But again, I think you own AP, you know that AP actually, it's definitely much more expensive to service compared to Rolex. So I mean, in terms of if you have a worry of servicing your watch, you want to have a workhorse and do not give you a lot of problem, then I think Rolex is maybe a better choice for you.
Yeah, right. But the thing about AP is that the if you wear especially the Royal Oak with the normal ones with a bracelet, it's just a very different feeling. It's very hard to explain. It's not like Rolex. Rolex you get bored of the Jubilee or the Oyster, but that is very, very different, very hard to explain. So 30K to 100K, we're talking about offshore, we're talking about some Rolexes. Any particular Rolex we should look at? But what are the undervalued ones? Like last year, a lot of people are talking about the Explorer, right? The Explorer, I think the second one, the one with the polar dial, right? People were actually aiming for that to be discontinued, and then it did not because Rolex just flipped a finger to everybody, right?
Correct.
So, if I have let's say I made a ton of money on Bitcoin right now. I want to put it into like 30K to 100K. I'm looking into Rolex sports model. Daytona is out of the range already. I don't care whether it can be a little bit pre-owned, but I just don't want it to be like neo vintage. I don't want it to be too old. What am I looking at in terms of my choices that I can invest in that hopefully it will go up in value?
Okay. You see that this last year itself, it's a crazy year. Last year is the most crazy year for Rolex because of the pandemic. They've actually halted their productions, and that is the reason why the price itself shoot through the roof. And also last year they have relaunched the new Kermit, which is currently now people call them the Starbucks, Rolex Starbucks, which is the green bezel and the black color face. And also last year they have successfully launched this OP, the Oyster Perpetual, where the Tiffany dial itself is asking a premium of about 60,000, close to 70,000, and it is still out of stock. So if you ask
70,000.
Yeah, it's crazy. Desmond is 60 plus, close to 70.
Oh my gosh. If you guys do not know, Oyster Perpetual is like the starter range for Rolex. It's like what older people buy for their kids when they graduate college.
Correct.
And it has nothing but just a freaking...
Not even the date.
Oh my goodness. 70... Oh my god. Because 70K, you can buy 2 Pepsi at retail. I just bought a Pepsi from retail. 35K, I think.
Yeah.
Insane. Wow.
The green color one OP is running at about 50 plus. Insane.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, insane. Insane. Yeah. So if you ask me, we are talking about not retail price, we're talking about gray market price, right, Desmond? For the range of below 100, we're talking
gray
about
market,
gray market. Because I mean, not everybody are VIPs that can get the
you can't
price.
walk into Rolex and get a Daytona. It's impossible. If you can get it, please teach me how you're getting it.
No way. I have to pay through my nose as well from my dealers in Europe, right? So if you ask me that, okay, this is the same question as one of the members who actually asked me this afternoon. I'll tell him that look, in Rolex is a very if you want to play an investment game in Rolex, it's a very different type of market. So there are some people who always think that they wanted to buy a cheap Rolex, like the Explorer, like so-called, even some of them, they will say that Explorer 1 and Air King is a sports model. I think that's when you and me know that those are not the real sports model, right? Those are not the real sports model. So for this game itself, if you really want to get something that the price will actually increases, I will always tell them to bet on the safe one, which are the popular models. If you're not talking about like the Daytona's level, I will still ask you to go for the Jubilee Pepsi. Okay, I will still ask you to go for the Batman. Okay, Jubilee. I'll tell a bit later why I said about the Jubilee so-called bracelet Pepsi and also Batman. And then I'm talking about even like the older Hulk, which is not the Starbucks, which is the green Hulk. These are the three that I will suggest. Okay, or there is one that personally I think that when it discontinue the single rate sea dweller. Okay, I think these are the four that maximum I would recommend. Don't talk about the Explorer 2, don't talk about the Yachtmaster, forget about the Yachtmaster 2, forget about the rest, Deep Sea, whatever. I think these are the four that even Black Sub, I will not ask you to put if you have that type of money, right? Because if you always ask me about a Black Sub and a Hulk, I will always tell you that to put money into a Hulk than a Black Sub. Right. So those are the four models. And the reason why I talk about Jubilee is because you notice that Desmond, if I know that you are a Rolex collector, right? You notice that Rolex has hardly come up with sports model with a Jubilee bracelet. So the chances of them discontinuing this combination is much more higher than a sports model with a oyster bracelet. So maybe I want to explain to people a bit what is a Jubilee bracelet, what is a oyster bracelet. Maybe they might not get it. But if you ask me itself, the Pepsi Jubilee, the Batgirl, which is the Batman with Jubilee bracelet, the single red sea dweller, and also the green Hulk. These are the four. I'll ask people to actually just invest in it.
We got some question actually. So let's do some question. Yeah, we have Victor
Okay.
Gu asking how you get Pepsi from retail. Any trick or tips? I'm not sure if Dr. Michael, you have ever gotten any sports model from retail in the last 2 years. Have you gotten any?
Actually, we will never actually get a retail price because when we have to buy in bulk because from our collections in Europe. I mean that you know that the reason why you can get a Pepsi in retail is because of your previous purchase history. You have actually hit a certain limit, and that's the reason why they allow you to get a Pepsi so-called sports model. So you need to be a VVIP, and how to become a VVIP is simple. Just spend money.
Yeah.
The more you spend when you become VVIP, then John, you can walk in and tell them that I want a Daytona, want a Pepsi, or else the waiting list goes on 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. Yep.
I see that our viewership goes up as soon as we talk about this topic. But for me, I'll just share my experience. I'm always a big fan of the Rolex Day-Date. A lot of people think that, Day-Date is not sports, I'm not going to buy. I'm a big fan of the band. I'm a big fan of the design. I always like the classic Datejust Day-Date. That's why I have Datejust and Day-Date. I don't like all the sports model. Like if you tell me, if there's no hype, no value involved, Day-Date or a Daytona, I prefer a Day-Date over Daytona. And I have both. So I for me, I wear the Day-Date. I prefer it. That's why I went ahead and bought a Day-Date. And because of that purchase, my AD stands for authorized dealer. The person that sells Rolex, the company that sells Rolex, went ahead and say, hey, this purchase qualifies you for potentially a sports model when it comes. Do you have anything in mind? For me, I always wanted the new Pepsi, but I couldn't get it in the past. I said, I just want a Pepsi. Within 2 months, he called me, your Pepsi arrived. So, but I just thought it was interesting to just answer that question. So it's very similar. I've also got other friends who have bought Daytona and Batman through authorized dealers before. But that's because in the past they were buying other brands like Brigade. They're buying like Gégé Lecoultre and other brands that nobody wants to buy. And you have to think from the perspective of the vendor themselves. they want to sell to someone that potentially will wear the watch or potentially will be able to buy more watches and support the company much more. I think that pretty much answers that question. And then we have a question from Dixon. Dato, let's say we are just starting out. What's the first watch we should be aiming for?
Okay, I think that goes back to the answer where that's what you asked, those below 30,000, right? I think that if they have a budget of below 30,000, there's only two brands, Tudor and Omega, and I will still bank on Tudor. The reason why my heart follows Seamaster is because of James Bond. That's purely because of
Which Seamaster, the new one, the No Time to Die one?
You see, for all the Rolex, for all the Omega Seamaster that get associated to James Bond, if it's a numbered limited edition 007 Seamaster, the price eventually went up. So I will go for that one. Yes, but if you can get the current so-called Seamaster, the one with there's a blue color, there's a black color, there's a white color, there's a blue color. That one is selling about 18,000+. My answer is it is a superb watch. The in-house movement itself even comes with the meta protection. With that type of price, my answer is yes, it is a very, very nice watch. But again, if you are purely looking at you really want to be safe and you want to make money, then you might want to go back to Black Bay, the BB58 or the 41mm. Yeah. And Tudor has made great progress. Now all these engines are in-house compared to those days are ETA models. Yeah.
No Panerais?
No, not at all.
Well, I think from the grey market, Panerai is a good deal, right? If you buy from grey pre-owned.
Grey market, you can get a Panerai easily, like for example, at 15,000-16,000. But again, a 15,000-16,000, you can get a Tudor Pepsi, or you can still get a Black Bay 58. So I will still go for the Tudor.
Right.
Yeah,
So let's do the last category here, which is 100K and above to $500,000 ringgit. Okay, obviously, I think Nautilus is out of the range already. So 100K to 500,000. Would you say Jumbo falls in there?
$500,000, I can still get a pre-owned Nautilus. I will still bet on the Nautilus. If $500,000, I will still bet on a pre-owned Nautilus for sure. Okay. Because my target for Nautilus is going to be 800,000. So I will still go ahead with a Nautilus. But I always tell people that Daytona will hit a 200,000 mark, and the Royal Oak, the Blue Down, the 15500, that will actually hit eventually a 250,000 to 300,000. So you see, these three models or so, these few brands are comparatively. So if today, if you are thinking that you're like what you mentioned, you're getting a Royal Oak, not the Offshore, the Royal Oak, now is selling about 220, 230 for the blue face. But there are some buyers who they like to compare. It's like, look, the Royal Oak itself is a watch with a date. The Daytona is a chronograph with a function. And usually people don't use the function, trust me. So they will compare, it's like, wow, why Daytona is at 170, 160, and the Royal Oak is at 230. So people, Chinamen, Malaysians or whoever people who buy, they will find that, why not I'll go and get a Daytona comparatively. So that's why the demand for Daytona itself is more. So one day when Daytona move up closer to 200 grand, and then people will start thinking of why not I get a AP, because the AP brand itself is definitely higher level, one notch above these are Rolex, and this will push the price of the Royal Oak up to maybe close to quarter to 300,000. When it hits 300,000, then actually the Aquanaut itself will start moving. When Aquanaut itself it will start moving, it will actually push the price of Nautilus even higher. So I just
want to ask you this in regards to this, right? Why do you bank on Patek Nautilus? By the way, Aquanaut is also a Patek. Why do you bank on Patek Nautilus and not AP's Jumbo? Because they're discontinuing it for next year.
First of all, this Patek Philippe, they have actually announced that they have discontinued the 5711, and we have actually saw the price of the new Olive 5711. The price itself is asking for about 1.3 million, which is 3 times or close to 4 times of the retail price, right? So it is actually, you can see that the Olive price is at 1.3, and the current blue color price is at about 600. So the difference between the green color and the blue color, the gap is too huge. So eventually they will meet somewhere in between. So my investment is sort of like guaranteed, where I know that the blue color will eventually get closer to the green color, or the green color will eventually drop down slower to the lower to the blue color, which I don't think so, because they already announced to the whole world that they are discontinuing the Nautilus, and they are closing down a lot of their boutiques, right? They are closing down a lot of boutiques because they want to fulfill the orders. This is what they say. But let's imagine if they close out the boutiques for the next 3 years, and if they come back after the next 3 years, automatically the price of a Nautilus, if they relaunch that time, it will hit $1 million. So I think that the Patek Philippe itself, they have a very good story, and they have very proper planning and branding itself. So if you ask me, I will still bet in Nautilus rather than the APs.
We have a question from Bridget here. If I buy a Rolex at the current peak price, is there a possibility that its value will drop?
This is a very generic question. I need to know which model she is actually asking at. Like for example, if you ask me whether I will still get a Daytona at 160, my answer is yes, I will still get. It is already at its peak. If you ask me whether will I get a Pepsi at 92,000 now, I will still get it because I think that it will go above 92,000. Yeah, so it depends on which model this viewer is actually asking.
Okay, I think that's fair point as well. So guys, if you're watching this and you're enjoying the show tonight, if you're learning something, so this is very industry insider sort of information. If you're not understanding a lot of terms like Jubilee, oyster, we're not talking about oyster that you can eat, yeah, by the way, just to be clear, right? Jubilee is not we're not talking about a train in London, yeah? So the thing is, all of these are very insider term, like, when Dr. Michael was mentioning things like Batman, we're not talking about going and buying a watch with a Batman, like a cartoon Batman on it. That's a totally different thing, right? So you can just search for it, like Rolex Batman, Rolex Batgirl, Rolex Pepsi, then you get an idea about what they look like. And I do this, Dr. Michael, this is a funny thing that we did before MCO with my entrepreneur students. We will bring a lot of our students who wanted to do business to understand the luxury market by going to luxury stores in Marina Bay Sands, in Pavilion KL, and we bring them to luxury stores, and then we bring them to Rolex and have them ask for watches like the Pepsi and Daytona. And then have them pretend to be like a millionaire going in saying that I've got the cash, let me buy your damn Daytona right now, and then they'll turn away.
Yes,
and it become a learning lesson, because I think the psychology here is so strong. I think, Jonathan, you know about this as well. For a lot of people, especially in the luxury market, the harder it is for someone to get something, the more they want it. It's just the nature of things. Is there any last words that you would like to share, Dr. Michael?
I mean that thank you very much for onboarding me to this talk. I mean that I'm definitely more than happy if there's more questions or there's chance to share about this moving forward. And with John, I know him from the first day until now. He's a master of branding, and I'm pretty sure watch itself touches him is because he understands the importance of branding and the power of branding itself. So if you ask me, like Desmond, I mean that JLC is a very good brand. They do very good branding.
Love JLC.
Yeah, but it's just, I can't say why. It's just, it's not working as good as what the rest of the brands are doing, because maybe they didn't find actually a very correct ambassador to actually carry out the JLC itself. So to me, I think Doctor Strange is a very good ambassador for JLC. Perfect spokesman for JLC. So to me, it's okay, guys. Anybody who are in front of this talk today, go and buy a watch if you think that you wanted to treat it as an asset, as an investment. Do some research, understand a bit more before you pull the trigger. Don't regret it, because there are a lot of buyers who come to our shop at first who bought a FM. So I don't want to mention what is the full name of FM, right? They'll tell me that, hey, Mike, I like this watch. I want to reward myself. 35,000, 40,000 is not an issue. So at the point of time when they buy it, it's not an issue. After a few years, when their choice, when their taste change, they say, hey, Mike, now I want to get a Rolex. Can I trade in my FM to you or not? I said, I'm more than happy. So what's the price of the FM? I said, I'll take in 14 to 15,000. He said, what? I lost 50%. I said, can you remember like 2, 3, 4 years ago when you wanted to buy, we already educate you, but you say that is not an issue. So if you ask me anything that hits above 50,000, 70, 100,000, it is an asset. It has to treat it like an investment already. So I mean, unless you really don't mind and you won't make a big fuss out of it when you want to sell in future, you don't mind losing 50%, 40%, then go ahead with any watches that you like. But if you really want to treat watch as an asset, please do a lot of homework, maybe talk to people in the industry, and then only pull a trigger. Then you'll be a happy man after 5-10 years.
I think this is relevant to the what you were just bringing up by Jason. Joe, what is your opinion on Grand Seiko? I've looked at Grand Seiko for like 2 years, but I've never bought a Grand Seiko before. I look at it, wow, so beautiful, but I'll never walk out. I'll never pay for some reason. So,
Okay.
man, you want to go back to that question and answer it?
Sure. Jason is one of our members, right? I know that he loves watches. So, can you let me know what are the brands that give you the best quality in terms of dress watch below 20,000? Is there any brand in mind, Jonathan or Desmond? 20,000, you can get a superb craftsmanship, and then it is a conversation starter. So
Only independent,
actually,
right? But big
correct.
brands, I don't think so.
Correct. So if you ask me, Grand Seiko is very smart. They know where is their positioning. So they actually position Grand Seiko at slightly above 20,000. But if you are good in negotiating, you will get it about 20 or sub 20. So Grand Seiko itself, there are so many models in the market. Like for example, the Snowflake, I will always tell people, just go and buy it if there is no premium. Just buy a Snowflake. It will hold value. And there are a few limited editions in Grand Seiko. It's also very worthwhile for you to buy, because at the price point below 20,000 or slightly above 20,000, you can't get such quality in terms of a dress watch. I mean, you can talk about Tudor, right, Desmond? You look at Tudor's dress watch, I think you turn away with the
Yeah.
yeah, they just can. They are good in sports, but they are not good in dress watch. But Seiko itself, they have the finest, they have the Zaratsu polishing, they have the technology like the spring drive. And you look at the movement of spring drive, it's so memorized. It is so smooth until you're like, wow, why there is such a movement that is so smooth. It's definitely even smoother compared to Rolex or any other brands out there. Spring drive is one different level. Yeah.
Okay, hope that answers the question. All right. John, any last question or last word or anything you want to share, your thoughts?
Yeah, I always enjoy this kind of discussion because there's a lot of different perspective. And I can't wait to just hang out with you guys again over wine and looking at watches.
Sure.
Yeah, so thanks, Dr. Mike, for joining us this evening. And
Thanks.
for all of you guys for listening, I hope you guys have gained some different perspective as well. If you guys want to learn more about watches, about how to invest in watch, go and follow Dr. Mike's Facebook page, right? It's called Watch Investment. Yeah. And you will see.
This logo.
Yeah, that's the logo. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you see there's tons of research being done. As far as I know, Dr. Mike is a very data-driven person. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you will be able to see a lot of analysis that's being done by him as well. So thanks, Mike. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Yeah, more than happy to do a face-to-face gathering with Desmond and Jonathan and with any of the viewers in front. Come to my shop, play around with my watches, more or less my watches, and then we'll go for coffee. Not a problem at all. So
Sounds
come and see
good.
us. We are at Publica Watch Club. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys.
right,
Help us
cool.
out. Share. Give us a like. Share this show. This is a live show that we do every Thursday night. Go ahead and share this out. And you can find the clips on our YouTube channel as well, which will drop the link on our Facebook page. That's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's session. Give us a like so that Dr. Michael also know that you're enjoying today's conversation. All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.